So, any CODEC moments from you, Snake?
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 3 of the CODEC Moments podcast. I'm Ephraim Scufflegrit, joined here as hopefully always with a man who needs no introduction, Flash Medallion. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic this morning. How are you going?
I'm as well doing fantastic this morning.
Mornings are slightly different.
Yeah, it's about 1:40 a.m. over there?
I'm going to say 1:39, but yeah, close enough.
9:39 over here then.
That's not too bad. Sun's up then, sun's up.
Sun has risen. So, got anything new going on with you?
Well, everything new's just finished. So I was out tonight. I mentioned last week, I think, we did a table reading of The Importance of Being Earnest. So that was tonight. Rocked down to the theatre and just had an audience there, free wine, free cheese, and we just basically read straight off the script. It went really, really well. And then I had a few drinks and a few more drinks and played some poker. And then I realised it was time for the podcast, so I came racing home. And here I am.
And here we are. Right on, dude. Yeah, nothing too much new going on over here. I hopped back on metalgearsolid 4 to try to get the platinum before Phantom Pain comes out. And really not looking forward to the chicken run. I started the chicken run, and then I goofed something up, and so now I'm having to finish the game.
How do you goof up a chicken run? What did you goof up?
The saves or something got messed up, and I couldn't figure out if I had already done the 4 hours of crouching and then the 4 hours of rolling, and did it
the only solution
before?
The only solution is to do it again. You never want to repeat the chicken run. That's the only rule number 1 of chicken run is if you're unsure, do it all over again. I actually posted an image onto the sub, and it's in the FAQ or in the wiki somewhere, about which skill sets count as which skill sets. Like if you're in a cardboard box, it counts as crouching. So you can get your cardboard box time and your crouching emblem at the same time. Things like that. I hope that's useful.
Very, actually. I was just turning off the I was just turning off the TV and walking away.
Yeah. My PTSD from Chicken Run is getting all the continues. And this, my strategy is get in a whole lot of firefights in Act 1 and just let yourself die, while using stealth camouflage to get a whole lot of alerts, then disappear, then get alerts and disappear, rack it all up. Do the same thing in Act 2 when you're hitting the power plant and the villa. I think the fastest respawn, I may be wrong, but the fastest I could find is in Shadow Moses Island. Metal Gear Solid 4 spoilers, everybody. There's a bit after you clear there's a new room when you're going through it, different from Metal Gear Solid 1, where the big geckos are hanging out. You got to sneak through them.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and then you come out the other side, and you come out by the door where you would have exited after you fought Raven, and then you meet back up with the original path. And there's trapdoors and geckos on the floor. So what you can do, you spawn in there, and it takes about 5 seconds for you to run forwards, crawl through a hole. If you're running short on alerts, you can get spotted by a gecko and then fall down the trapdoor, and then hit continue, and then it's about 5 seconds when you start again, crawl through the hole, get spotted, fall down. But that's still an entire evening of doing that shit. Chicken Run is torture.
That's still insanely helpful. I was only through 3/4 the first act, so I was like, oh fuck it, I'll torch through, get the story. Because I had also accidentally started on normal, and I did that, and then the internet blew up at me you need to do Liquid Easy. I was like, crap, I'll just go through the whole thing.
Normal I can't see any problems with normal. I suppose it's faster on Liquid Easy, but the other problem with Liquid Easy is they can't spot you very well, so it's harder to trigger alerts.
I've always wanted there to be some kind of canon explanation for the very easy difficulties and stuff. There's there's a glitch in the Genome Army, and they're all half retarded now or something.
Yeah,
like that.
I'm down with that.
But yeah, that's pretty much the only thing going on over here. But we do have some stuff going on with the podcast for sure. We just made the move to YouTube. That seems to be going well.
Mm-hmm.
And
hopefully that's a lot easier for you guys. Actually, on that note, I'll say it now. Due to the topic of discussion this week, we might be putting a little bit of video just for reference. So I'll try and give you guys a heads up when I say I'll probably edit some video in here. So if you got it in another browser, flick over and just a bit of a multimedia experience maybe.
Awesome, yeah, that's I'm super pumped about that. get some rising stuff in for today's discussion. And we're going to be on iTunes, hopefully shortly. A couple of people have been asking, when are you going to be on iTunes? Are you on iTunes yet? What's the status on iTunes? The feeds got submitted to them last night. So I don't know how long it takes for them to go through the process or if there might be a hiccup or two. I forgot to tag it as explicit language because I can cuss like a sailor. So I don't know if they're going to have any problems with that.
I mean, we could seriously fuck up our mother cunting chances of getting accepted if we screw around with our explicit language.
We wouldn't fucking want that now, would we?
Sons of bitches. So hopefully that's okay.
Yeah, it was a process. Our podcast MP3s are now hosted on a random diet website that doesn't get used anymore. Codec Moments Podcast, proudly hosted by happybellydiet.com.
We'll link that. We'll link that in the YouTube.
So they can see the one post.
Cool.
But yeah, let's jump right into it. I've really been looking forward to this topic since before we even got started with this podcast.
Oh, well, in that case, can I suggest we delay the suspense and do a subreddit rundown?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's open this guy up here.
To go through.
What's next?
It's all images here. I'm going to go down a certain level. So right at the top, past the last week, sitting at 1,210, we have a Pepe meme by Sky Monroe. 42 Days, Reasons to Live, and it's a book with Phantom Pain in it. So that's a bit of a running gag on MGG as far as I can tell, that everyone's supposed to kill themselves after the Phantom Pain comes out. So special shout out to you special kids out there who are down with that.
I actually really liked this. I hadn't seen it on the sub yet, and my buddy sent it to me, and people probably might actually look at it like that. So, I mean, I thought that was pretty funny.
Oh no, it's absolutely great. Use of a very standard stock meme, and I posted that on Facebook. That's how lame I am, but that's how good it was.
Awesome. All right, next up we've got the Joy.
Yeah, this seems to be the running gag of, and I haven't seen the movie yet. I can't even remember what it's called right now because I'm still a few vodkas under. But the movie about the things in the head, the people and their joy and their emotions, and.
Oh right, I think it's is it Inside Out?
That's the one. Well done.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, but Kojima apparently really liked it. He can't shut up about it on Twitter, so I'm probably going to check it out.
And he was making the same jokes that a bunch of MGS fans would make about all the emotions, character, blah, blah, blah. So, hey, we're all on the same page here.
Yeah, we're all in on the joke.
And hey, it was a good photo. That's fantastically posed photo. Someone spent their time, a bit of blue tack underneath Big Boss's foot on the ground there or whatever's going on. Moving on, Big Boss CQC skills. Bit of a repost, but also worth looking at. It's just a bit of knife flaring and with the old robot hand there.
I thought, because, I saw that trailer maybe once. Because, we've got the Kojima directed trailer, which is absolutely amazing. So I haven't, rewatched the Konami one as much as I probably should have. And I didn't really get a good look at this scene until I saw this GIF. And yeah, it's really complex, like the movements and stuff that he does to get the knife out of her hand. It's really impressive.
Few interesting things in the whole trailer. This one I'm looking at over and over again. It looks like the blade spins through his fingers. The only reason I'm seeing that is because it's happening in super slow motion, but pretty sweet. And of course, the discussion pops up. Yeah, robot arm. Hey, do what you like. Discussions popped up. Are they fighting or are they training? I'm going to go with training, but
that's what it looks like. They seem pretty on the same side throughout all of the trailers. I think they just have maybe that one little conflict when they first meet, and then they're buddies.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty safe bet. Also, the knife spin gives us a chance to pan over into Quiet's legs, so yeah, Metal Gear Solid.
Never need an excuse for that.
Oh, yeah. Moving on. So what will it be? So that's the boss's speech dubbed over a photograph of Tigger and Piglet.
Can we discuss why Piglet's laying in a pool of blood?
We can now.
That's got to be shopped, right?
Yeah, I'm going to go with recolor there, but who knows? I haven't watched Winnie the Pooh for a while. Maybe they found a raspberry juice factory or something. Anyone's guess there. If someone can find the source, let us know. We'll make you famous.
Yeah, we'll mention you on this podcast. Congratulations.
All right, what's next?
Down, we've got Meryl by, I apologize in advance, Ilya Kushinov? Kavishnov.
Meryl, Ilya Kushinov, I'm going to go with.
Gesundheit.
Yeah. It's your standard kind of fan art.
I do like the blur on the gun, like the perspective is through a camera. I thought that was pretty cool.
Bit of depth of field. Can't comment. Fan art isn't right up my alley. I mean, there's a girl with red hair who kind of looks like Meryl who's carrying a gun. It doesn't look unrealistic. Well done. Good image. And I'm going to end on this one. The Rick and Morty Big Boss and Ocelot, which I think showed up on MGG and was quickly cross-posted here.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fantastic image from Rick and Morty, which is adaptable to just about anything. But all it really takes is to get the right characters in there, and they did.
I do. Sorry, go on.
I was just kind of trailing off, really. Big Boss just making Ocelot look at something is a very hilarious idea.
I hope we get kind of like pally stuff like that between the two of them.
Yeah, I'll avoid the temptation to try and do my Rick impression, but yeah, there's a lot of. I mean, Rick and Morty. If anyone hasn't seen it, I'm sure everyone has. But make a point. The second season's coming out soon, but make sure you watch the first season first. It's a very well considered show. I'm just going to go straight out there. Hands down, the best television of 2014. Yeah,
wow,
came out in 2014. Hands down, like I admit no contenders. Rick and Morty was the best television in 2014. It's smart. It's not self-insistent. It's a lot of things, and it's a new style of humor. It's like Futurama on crack, but it's still got its own identity. There's a lot going on in there, and it's very, 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 very good. So everybody go and watch it.
I think what gets me the most about it is how, like you said, it's smart. Like how intelligently written it is.
Yeah, it lets you form your own conclusions about the joke. Like a lot of the jokes are set up in the fact that you have to connect a lot of dots together sometimes. So it respects its audience, and other times there are shitty gags. Like I'm not going to talk about one because I think the official episode isn't out yet. But I can't talk enough about it. It's smart, it's heartfelt, and it knows what it is. It knows what kind of show it is, and it's not afraid to admit it, and it's not afraid to rag on its audience for being the kind of person who would enjoy a show like Rick and Morty.
That's true.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely adore it.
I do want to go one more post down on the rundown to touch on that beautiful poster that came out.
Ah, yeah, good call.
Yeah, the Big Boss Quiet poster. They're both covered in blood. Big Boss looks a little like furry to me in this poster a little bit.
It's a very interesting poster. It's very provocative.
Especially with Quiet's tits absolutely just covered in blood.
Not an unconscious decision, yeah.
Yeah, her face, it's got some smears on it. Let's just cover the tits completely.
Yeah, there's a lot that could be said about that. It seems very self-aware. It's like, oh, you like tits? Well, check out their tits, because they're fucking violent. Yeah, I don't know. I think this kind of stuff, this material we're seeing, will be much more interesting a year after Phantom Pain's come out.
I agree.
I think once people have really been able to find out what the game's about and really dive into it, this kind of messaging will be much clearer in hindsight, which is interesting in itself. Will help in reading the piece a bit more later on.
And speaking of getting the game and figuring it out, what's really interesting to me, and I know a lot of people in the sub have been talking about this, is how prevalent Quiet is in all of the marketing. And allegedly, we can go through the whole game without ever meeting her.
Yeah, that's right. Discussion's come up a few times, hasn't it? I'll just fall back on my standard in that Kojima, he knows how to create expectations. So obviously there's certain expectations being created about Quiet as a character. Her presence, she's clearly nice to look at. She's nice to have around. She seems pretty overpowered as a buddy. To use the lingo, she's Quiet as OP. Please nerf Quiet. Please Koji Pro nerf Quiet or else we're quitting. Shotguns OP. That shit. She seems like the ideal buddy. So in my mind, instantly that creates expectations. So I'm very curious to see where that goes. I don't want to guess. I've made guesses, but I don't want to really guess because what's the point? But it seems like that's a very deliberate expectation that's just begging to be turned on its head.
Yeah, I think you're totally right about that, because I mean, I'm not, Mr. Kojima Ruse Cruise or whatever, but he can be, he can lead you to believe one thing with showing you, the trailers and stuff. Had you not have read the interviews where he said that, you may never meet Quiet, if you had just seen the trailers, you would assume that Quiet is, another main character. Like, she's going to be the most important person in the game besides Big Boss.
Absolutely, that's what it seems like, eh? She seems on par with Cars and Ocelot. Going by the marketing material, that would not be an unreasonable conclusion to make. And we're hearing that, hey, you could skip her. I'm curious about that, to be honest. There's a big part of me that's tempted just to like kill her in cold blood the second she shows up, just so that my experience is different the first time around from everybody else. But I don't know. I don't know if I'll go ahead with that. It'd be a fun thing to try out because it seems like everyone's going to want to keep it, because why wouldn't you? Because it's a hot chick who's a sniper and can do all this cool shit. There could be a lot of... I don't want to say anything too specific, but without going down the Ruse Cruise train, I'm not trying to say, Mr. Kojima is going to screw everybody over and turns out she's Big Boss or some shit. Expectations are being created, and there's one thing he's great at, is subverting expectation.
Oh, for sure. And speaking of her abilities and stuff, I think my favorite theory that has come out from Phantom Pain, not only just because of the context of it, but because we've had this conversation plenty of times before, what makes a good theory. People have asked, like, why don't people like theories around here? And this one actually has evidence behind it. It has reasoning behind it. It doesn't use assumptions as evidence. The theory that Quiet is either like an escaped skull before the experiment, or the skulls are, maybe a product of trying to replicate her abilities in normal people, or maybe she's, the first crack at the bat for a genome army where they're putting her genes in normal people and stuff like that. I thought that was a really cool idea.
Yeah, and Wade touched on that last week. Definitely there's a link. And it's a chicken on the egg thing is the way he put it, and I agree very well. It seems like either the skulls are based on her, or she's a failed skull, one of the two. There's a lot pointing towards that, which sets up an interesting discussion once that story shows up.
Absolutely. Excuse me. So you ready to jump into Rising?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it, brother.
All right, cool. We can edit out the little part before. So this is a topic that I was really looking forward to since before we even really got to doing this podcast, just because I know that we stand on opposite sides for at least the story of Rising. Before we, talk about it, I'm not saying Rising is not a good game, that it's not a fun game. I had a lot of fun with it. It's a lot of fun to play. I just did not care for the implications of the story.
That's a very valid stance. So I'm probably going to be presenting my position. So yeah, just to get the same thing out of the way, I don't want to say anybody's wrong or you should like it, but I think there's a lot to it.
And it's definitely a deep story. I'll let you go into the veteran thing. I think that's a very good defense of the story. My whole thing was a couple things, really. It felt like Raiden got robbed of his ending in Metal Gear Solid 4, and I realized that a lot of Rising's point is that real life doesn't necessarily have happy endings. Someone's story just doesn't stop when they get over a hump in their life. They don't always just live happily ever after. I get that about Rising, but I think the main thing for me was that it kind of robbed Solid Snake of his things. I think, and this might be a controversial opinion, that the world was better off with the Patriots running things than... Yeah, exactly. I think the world was better off with the Patriots running things than what happened with Rising, because the war economy is still there. That never changed. But with the Patriot AI, there were the end goal wasn't the war economy. The end goal was the advancement of the human species, and the war economy was a way for it to get money and power and forward research and development, where in Rising you see the war economy is still there, but it's just a bunch of greedy corporate assholes just trying to get money out of it. It's not really a means to an end for anything good. It's just, oh, ha ha ha, twirl my mustache, I'm gonna get millions of dollars for all these people dying, bah ha ha ha.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to first principles then. So you say that you feel like it robbed Raiden of his ending. What in your mind is Raiden's ending that you think was robbed?
I think in Metal Gear Solid 4, it was set up that Raiden was going to live a more personal life and get closer to Rose and, be a father to his son. And he even said to Rose, "Oh, I'm done with all the fighting. I promise I'll never leave you again." And that was the one that really stuck with me, was that "I promise I'll never leave you again."
Yeah.
And then within just a few short years, he's back in the Middle East, like cutting people's arms off.
Right. Yeah. Then you went on to say Solid Snake. You thought it kind of undid a lot of what Solid Snake fought for as well.
I did, because it feels like Snake's journey was all for naught. Because, like I said, I think the world was better off than before he took down SOP and the AIs.
Right, it's very interesting. And I'm just going to touch on one more thing. You said the Patriots were pushing development, like the human race was still developing, and technology was advancing, and everything in that sense.
More or less, yeah. It's obviously a gray area, but I think of course they wanted control, but at the same time, we saw things like the internet and all the other things that the Patriots, probably secretly funded.
Okay. Because the main message I get from Metal Gear Solid 4 is that, and it's talked about by quite a few characters, is that the end result of the Patriots is stasis. This is stagnation. They want to freeze human development. They want a world where nothing changes, because that's how they secure their power, and that's a commentary on our modern power structures. The internet was a threat to the Patriots, really, and they moved very quickly to neutralize that threat. So that's my personal takeaway, is that Metal Gear Solid 4 particularly talks about the real human danger of stagnation, of power structures kind of grinding to a halt and just keeping themselves going for no other reason than just to maintain the status quo. So, yeah, the progress thing is interesting that you say that, because I felt like it's saying something very different about progress. At the end of the day, when Big Boss is talking to Snake, and he says, "Look, we don't know what's going to happen next, but you guys are free from the status quo. You're free from being locked into the same patterns now. You are free to go and make your own mistakes." No one ever said that the world's going to be great now that the Patriots are gone. They just said, well, you've got a chance to do whatever it is that you guys wind up doing. Maybe that's continue a war economy, maybe that's change an economy, but this age of perpetual warfare as economy, warfare as the only gears of which for society to continue moving has been shut down.
And I think,
and then for me,
go on. Go. I was just going to say that, I think that's actually part of my problem, was that Big Boss is saying you are all free of this control. You're free to live whatever life you want. And like you said, the war economy being kind of the only gears for the country, I didn't really feel that anything had changed in Rising. I think it was Senator Armstrong even said to Ryden, he's like, "Oh, do you think that was going to change anything?" "No, the war economy is still going strong." I was like, well, fuck.
Yeah, no, he makes a really strong point, though. He makes a great point. He said the Patriots didn't invent warfare. Warfare has been going on since before history. Warfare is pretty much what's defined our evolution as a species, the export of power. We've been fighting for longer than anybody can remember. What the Patriots did was took that fundamental truth and turned it to their advantage. So when they disappear, there's a power vacuum, and it's only very natural that warfare replaces it. The difference is, and it's very nuanced, and I might be going too far into this, and I'm very willing to admit that. But there is a nuanced difference in that under the Patriot system, your only choice, war isn't even a choice. War is the same thing as owning a bank account, or the same thing as filling a car up with petrol. It just implies and involves war. Whereas post-Patriots, that's no longer compulsory is the wrong word. It's no longer inherent to the system. And
that's a very good point.
There are other entities that will still use war because it's very, very powerful. It's an incredibly efficient way of controlling people, force of arms. And there's a power vacuum. There is no single will controlling everything. And suddenly people go, shit, we need security because we have no security. And security is inherently force. And then you get all these other PMCs like Desperado popping up. And the game essentially falls down and says, what happens after war? What does post-war mean? And we've been through it once culturally. The whole world has been through the cultural ramifications of post-World War II. All you have to do is think about ice cream parlors and burger joints and Cadillacs and, all that stuff really is post-war culture due to a bunch of reasons that I could be here for hours talking about. But it's economic, right? what happens after war is an economic shift. And in the case of Rising, we see people filling in these gaps economically. We also see idealists like President, I wish I could remember his name, but I don't. The President that Raiden is guarding in his prologue mission. This is an ideological guy who also acknowledges that kind of force is necessary. Hey, he's hired a PMC to protect himself. He's doing all sorts of good, but he's also kind of contributing to this economy, even though he's not forced into it. Again, you can go down that rabbit hole. But hey, he's hired Jack the Ripper, the butcher, the cyborg ninja robot dude, to hang out with him and save him from other threats. So, I think the big question of Rising is what happens post-war. And when you put that question in the Metal Gear Solid universe, the question becomes what happens post-Patriots. You can destroy or dismantle that control system, but that's never the end of the story because life goes on. So what happens in that power vacuum? And it examines that a little bit through the lens of an over-the-top action clusterfuck.
Very good point. Would you say that the world is a better place after Metal Gear Solid 4 as it's presented in Rising, or is it just more realistic that it is still, at the end of the day, just a place?
It's a hard question because we don't see much of the world. Again, on Metal Gear Solid, you only really see the battlefield.
True.
So that's a hard question, and the game doesn't really go out of its way to address that because nobody really seems to know. It's kind of hush-hush that the Patriots ever existed anyway. But I would suggest, if we're taking evidence from the text, I would say the fact that an idealistic young politician like President, what's his name, whose name I still can't remember, I'm really sorry.
Well, I think his name was like President, like Ubuntu or something like that. So.
I don't want to say that because it sounds horrible. I'm just going to Google search Rising. No, it's not going to work. Metal Gear Rising President. Anyway, the President, he wouldn't be able to exist in the Patriots universe. Oh shit! Metal Gear Rising President just comes up with like 3 million hits on Armstrong.
African.
Where was I? Yeah.
You were at, obviously edit this out.
Namani, President. Sorry,
right.
Silent. President Namani. His name is President Namani. He was a prime minister of an unidentified African country during the late 2010s. President Namani couldn't exist in the Patriots, under the Patriots. He's an idealistic. We don't see much of him, but it's a platinum game, right? We get all our information through cliches. But he's an idealistic, charismatic, on the upswing political president guy who's clearly important enough to need a bodyguard. He couldn't exist in the age of the Patriots because the Patriots control politics. So if we're going to take that as a clue, because we don't have a lot to take much information from, personally, and this is probably just my personal politics, but I think that to me is indicative of the world being a better place. And it may be a less stable place, and maybe a more dangerous place for the average citizen, I don't know. But I think the fact that that kind of guy can exist in Rising, but it's pretty clear a young upstart couldn't become a popular president in the world of Metal Gear Solid 4. So maybe it's my personal politics, but I think to me that makes the world of Rising a slightly better place.
No, I think you're totally right about that. That actually definitely helps my perspective a little bit. Thank you for that.
No worries. Hopefully yeah.
I think a lot of my thing too was that I was so looking forward to what Rising originally was, because I was already kind of bummed out that MGS4, was kind of the end. I really liked MGS4. I know sometimes it's not the most popular of the games, but I mean, even especially when I was younger, when it first came out, and I saw the finality of Solid Snake's story and all that, I was like, okay, it's done. And then I saw the very first trailer when it was just Metal Gear Solid Rising. And it was going to be about, the Patriots were still going to be there. They're going to rescue Sonny, blah, 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 blah. And then, it's changed, and it's past Metal Gear Solid 4, and, Metal Gear Ray is still the main Metal Gear, but kind of, because you can beat him with your bare hands. And
yeah, I think there's a lot of different approaches to that. I think it was Chia just brought up the question the other day, just for the hell of it. He said, what do you think Metal Gear Rising Revengeance is canon? I think the fact that Platinum moved the setting of the game from being, I think the popular term these days is interquill, which is an awful word, but a set piece between, post Metal Gear Solid 2, before Metal Gear Solid 4, and they moved it out to a few years after Metal Gear Solid 4, is a pretty tacit acknowledgement of the fact that it's not really a valid question of whether it's canon or not. It's set in such a way that the canonicity is irrelevant.
I agree with you, because it has absolutely no bearing whatsoever on the rest of the series. Like, it doesn't... Raiden's the only character that it borrows, and Sonny, that it takes from the old series. It doesn't change anything about the main Solid series, and I think you're right. It's just set up in a way that, it doesn't matter. It's up to the player. If you want to reject it, then, well, go ahead and reject it. It doesn't have a bearing on anything. Yeah. It's not something like, something like Portable Ops is a little bit harder to reject, even though I personally do. It's harder because it carries such implications for the rest of the series, specifically the boss being assassinated, or the whole thing being planned out, like Volgin firing the nuke being planned out by Zero.
Yeah, that's hairy. But with Rising, we don't have those issues. With Rising, you could pretend it never existed, and that wouldn't stop you from appreciating any other Metal Gear game. I would suspect if we saw another Rising, it would be a full-on Rising 2, and it wouldn't be, say, the original story. I would say that Platinum, when they picked up the game, would have had a pretty big conversation about it and said, look, we're going to do whatever the fuck we want because we've got to make a good game, and it's got to be a good schlocky story. And that means we have to throw everything out the window. This can't be the story of Raiden in between point X and point Y. So, yeah, the canon question, is ultimately irrelevant. It doesn't matter. The only thing that really ties Metal Gear Solid to Metal Gear Rising is Solid Snake defeated the Patriots and Raiden was involved. That's the only real through line that matters.
And if another Rising was to come out, I think, I've said before I'd like it to be the original one, but recently I kind of thought about it, prepping for this conversation, actually, and I think I would rather do a straight-up Rising 2, especially if it showed us more about what was going on with the world. Like, if things had gotten remarkably better since Rising, not necessarily on the battlefield, but just globally, for mankind as a whole, I could probably get over a lot of, my initial problems that I had with Rising 1 if they still showed some kind of progression for the betterment of the world in Rising 2. Right, and I get that that's not necessarily realistic.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you. So for you, really, you're pretty invested in the idea that defeating the Patriots has to be pretty tangibly a good thing?
Only for for Solid Snake, really. I mean, he was like my hero growing up, so I want to see that he made a huge difference. And that's selfish and not realistic, and I do admit and get that. But that's still what I want to see.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate where you're coming from. It's a hard one for me because Solid Snake's motivation himself, he doesn't really talk about trying to make the world a better place. He seems to be coming from the point that all this Patriot nonsense that's going on, it's basically his problem. They created him. The only reason he exists is because of the Patriots and because of Big Boss and all this stuff. And a lot of his motivation is, well, look, this is just a problem with the world, and I need to take this down because I'm the only one who can, and it's a huge part of why I love Solid Snake. He does it because he's the only one who can, and it's a good enough reason for him, which I think informs Raiden later on, which maybe we can get to that later. I don't think he's out to improve the world. He just knows that whatever the Patriots are, whatever's going on, is not good enough, and it needs to stop, and that's all he needs.
I think that's definitely how he as a character was presented in MGS4 for sure. And I'm on the same page as you there. But something that I've always found kind of interesting about Solid Snake is that his character is so different depending on what game he's in. He kind of changes for, whatever story Kojima wants to tell. You're right, I think in MGS4, and, that played into Rising a little bit, where he said Raiden was just involved, Solid Snake did it because he was the only one, not to necessarily make the world a better place. But then if you look at MGS2, it's all about, I'm fighting for, for the good of humanity and making sure we don't repeat mistakes and blah, blah, blah.
That's a good point. That's a strong point. He's definitely fighting for the future of Metal Gear Solid 2. I'll totally concede that one. I just don't think... I guess it comes down to how you define the world as a better place. I think the world will be a less stable place after the Patriots are removed. A much less stable place. It kind of clearly is. You've got terrorists popping up and stuff again like that, as opposed to the kind of manufactured terrorism that the Patriots had control over. I guess we can't really say. We don't know what quality of life is like for your average civilian.
That's true. And speaking of the Wild West, too, though, you bring a good point, because that's exactly what Liquid predicted when Snake defeats him. Ocelot's like, do you really think this is... You've actually messed things up. Like, granted, didn't turn out exactly how Liquid expected it to, but at the same time, he called it. He's like, this is just a frontier now. You've gotten rid of the system. Everyone's just going to be out for themselves now.
Yeah. So we're missing a lot of information. Yeah, Rising kind of plugs that gap, that emptiness of, well, where did it go, and takes it back to, like, our society. Like, the example I'll jump to is the Detroit police, who are incredibly militarized in the world of Rising. And I guess that's really what its focus is on, is that the war, and like in a general sense, the Patriots are gone, the concept of war as the way the world works is gone. But the problem is the planet was so optimized for that you've got millions and millions and millions of soldiers, people who professionally fight, who now need to earn a living. And that's where we're getting back to what you were saying before about the veteran thing. And it's a kind of a two-pronged examination there. You want to end war, that's fine, but what are you going to do with all the soldiers? They have to come back to society. Rising, I think, its strongest point is how it looks at that in a lot of different ways.
Even though I do have, my issues with the story of Rising, I think that is actually my favorite part of the story. And it is deep on a meta level, because, that happens in real life. Veterans come back from the war and they can't find work. And then, you see all the Vietnam vets, living on the streets and stuff. They came back and they couldn't find jobs. And Rising did a great job of trying to put Raiden in those shoes. And him coming back from the battlefield, he couldn't find any job. And the way I kind of justify Rising's story to myself when I'm playing it is I picture Raiden, promising Rose that he would never leave her again. And he tried and tried and tried to find a job and just couldn't support his family. And so the only choice left to him was to go back to the battlefield.
Absolutely. I think that's a really almost explicit point. And he talks about it. He says he couldn't, the fake bodies and stuff were only so good. He couldn't go do shopping because as soon as he got on the bus and had to sit next to people, they're staring at him like he's a freak. He this guy can't work at McDonald's because he's obviously a freak. And that's a very Platinum way of bringing out a social issue, which I love about Platinum. And I actually wanted to go into a lot of Platinum before we started this, but we kind of jumped in. But I'm not a veteran. I haven't met very many veterans, but that's a very blunt, Platinum, over-exaggeration way of talking about those issues. You come back from war and try and work at McDonald's, you've got a lot of shit going on that's stopping you from functioning properly. And this is expressed kind of literally as, you've got a giant cyborg body and anyone can immediately see that this guy's not right. There's that kind of, that Platinum blunt metaphor coming through.
For sure. Then... just to poke another hole in that too, though, even though I do kind of like that explanation, could nobody hook Raiden up with a job after he helped save the world? Like nobody, like no one could get him like a desk job in the military or something, like Campbell or no one, anybody.
Yeah,
Meryl's got to have some connections and stuff.
Does she? Like her connection is all set up through Campbell, which is set up through the Patriots. Everybody who relies on everything through the military, that whole system's disappeared now.
It is still there, though.
I'm grasping at straws. No, you did right. You'd think between a handful of people who all know the truth, he could have got a job driving trucks in Australia, right?
Yeah, the guy did get, dismembered, and Solid Snake would have died several times over, not for Raiden. He was instrumental in saving the world. No one could be like, oh, well, I'll pay you to, be my personal assistant.
Yeah, but I guess that's his dysfunction, and that's something that comes up with Frank Yeager a lot. Naomi talks about, and coming up from the Darkness of Shadow Moses, actually, Nastasha comments on it about just the nature of PTSD and that these traumatized soldiers eventually just seek out the same conditions again. I don't know if that's medically accurate, but that's what they talk about. And that Frank Yeager was so traumatized by his experiences with Big Boss that once Naomi was safe, he pretty much just jumped on a plane and went back to fight. And then after Out of Heaven, he couldn't find anywhere else to fit in and just ended up going back again. I wonder how much we're supposed to
Raiden presents it as his own decision. Go, oh, I couldn't support my family, so I got a job as a security guard. Are we supposed to wonder how true that is or not? They might be reaching. But
I think by the end of the game, with the whole Jack the Ripper and him, saying like, "Oh, I do enjoy the killing," like, yeah, I think you're right. Like, he probably subconsciously kind of wanted it, like Frank did.
Oh, beyond that, like it's the actual trauma thing though, like being traumatized. And I mean that in capital T trauma. Like, he's fucked up. He's been fucked up, and there's no getting away from how fucked up Raiden's story is.
Let's not forget his childhood.
At some level, this is a guy who just can't do anything but return to the source of that trauma. So maybe that's there, maybe that's not. Yeah, it still circles back to the original question, in that we're supposed to believe at the end of Metal Gear Solid 4 that Raiden had his fill and he wanted to live with his family, and that was the end of that. I can't give a hard argument for it, except really Rising suggests, well, you know what, it's not as easy as just wanting to. Right,
and I think that's kind of more or less what my issue with it is. Like, oh, okay, well, I guess Raiden's just gonna like be a shitty dad. And I guess that's unfair to say. He is supporting his family, but I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? He just says, "Oh yeah, they're in New Zealand, where it's safe." Hey, shout out New Zealand, which is pretty realistic. I assume we wouldn't have much in the way of cyborg PMCs going on over here, unless we have some kind of Marmite war. That's all I got going. So yeah, I guess that's kind of landed us with that veterans discussion, where in Metal Gear Rising, the word cyborg is essentially code word for veteran, and the game spends a lot of time talking about what it means to be a veteran and what it means to live post-war. What is life like after war? Once you've experienced war, how does that affect you? Can you go back to normal? And that kind of pops up in the cutscenes in a few discussions.
This doesn't really have too much to do with like the quality of the story or the quality of the game itself, but what did you think of Raiden's Jack the Ripper voice?
His voice?
Like he puts on like later on in the game, after like he crosses the line or whatever and he goes back to Jack the Ripper, it's kind of cringy to me, to like his voice.
It never bugged me. Like I can totally see why everybody thinks it's cringy. Don't get me wrong. I can see why people don't like it. It doesn't personally bug me. It's just, I'm going to say 60%, hey, it's a platinum game, guys, get your shit together.
Yeah, true, very true.
And 40%, it's just a signifier. It doesn't. My question is, how would you prefer? Like, obviously, the style of this story requires, we're basically talking like high-level anime here. The style requires him to differentiate himself somehow. What's your alternative? Would you rather some kind of mechanical filter over his voice? Would you rather him, shout? Or change his accent? Or, there are only so many ways to communicate this thing, which clearly needs to be communicated. Putting on an angry voice, to me, isn't the worst way you could do that.
Right on. That's a fair point. You said you did want to talk about Platinum, too, which we have time to jump into if you want.
Sure. This really should have come first, but I don't know who knows the history of Platinum, but they're an absolutely phenomenal studio who came out of nowhere. I'm going to go ahead and say they first came to attention with Okami. They used to be known as Clover Studio. I'm going to check this first. They used to be known as Clover Studio. Okami is the first game that I knew on from them. There's a lot of Capcom guys in there. And they made God Hand as well, and they made Beautiful Joe. And Beautiful Joe was an early PS2 game that really jumped out at me.
I absolutely love Beautiful Joe. I actually still play it. Love that game.
Oh, it's fantastic, isn't it? It's an incredibly slick, funny, engaging action game.
And it came before. Yeah, exactly. And it came before all these indie studios started to put out 2D platformers. Beautiful Joe was, to me, the first decent side scroller I had seen since Super Nintendo.
Oh yeah, it just came out of nowhere. Beautiful Joe. Just for record, my first exposure to this style of gameplay was the original Devil May Cry when the PS2 came out. My parents bought one, but they said, "Hey, you can't have it till Christmas." I'm like, "What a shitty deal!" But anyway, you can do so many things. And we were out of town at my grandparents' place, And so the PS2 was still sitting under the tree back in our hometown, and we had all our spending money. And I'd read up on this Devil May Cry in a couple of magazines, and I convinced my brother to go halves on me and buy this game, even though there's no way we'd be able to return it. It'd be 2 more days till we could get home and play it. But I was sold, and Devil May Cry is fucking phenomenal. And that hooked me into the, what's commonly these days a platinum style of gameplay. And we found Beautiful Joe not long after that, which had like crossovers with Devil May Cry characters. And then Okami came out, which is absolutely gorgeous game. God Hand, that's the next level. If you haven't played God Hand, go play it. It's one of the best games ever made. It's hard, brilliant. But it's very, 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 very good.
I loved the style of God Hand. Like it was a gorgeous game. The story was deep. The gameplay was groundbreaking. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. It's just them improving their shit. And then they would go on and play Platinum after that, and they made Mad World and Bayonetta, which is just amazing game. Bayonetta, design-wise, along with all that cheekiness, it's just excellent stuff. I'd waste time trying to explain it. Of course, Bayonetta 2, and they made The Wonderful 101, on the Wii U. They came out after Revengeance, and they made Vanquish. Now, I've got to stop and talk about Vanquish because I loved Vanquish. In my head, Vanquish is the reason that Platinum were lined up with Konami. And if you've ever played Vanquish, it's very clearly a love letter to Metal Gear Solid.
Oh, right on. I actually have not. Can you give us a quick rundown of the story and the Metal Gear Solid elements?
There's no point running down the story because it's basically, space terrorists attack Space America and basically create Space 9/11, and then Space Hillary Clinton decides. I'm not kidding. It's like the President of the United States is basically Hillary Clinton. Space Hillary Clinton decides that something has to happen. They have to fight back. So they deploy these Marines, and this guy from DARPA, he's a scientist or a guy who's developed this super mecha fighting suit, who's basically just not Solid Snake.
The operatives take their orders directly from POTUS and SecDef. These guys are just interested in marking their territory.
And he meets up with a group of Marines who all have robot suits, who are led by Not Big Boss.
You're not allowed to smoke on the ship. This fight is for the men going home in pine boxes now. I'm changing the microwave's target to Moscow.
Why would the president order this?
Consider it a kind of economic stimulus package.
What? War is not economic stimulus. San Francisco is gone now.
That was for the good of all Americans.
And they go stomping through a space station, chasing after the terrorists. And it turns out, the space terrorists, and it turns out Space Hillary Clinton struck a deal with the space Russians, and you fight a bunch of stuff. You just shoot a bunch of robots and slide around in a suit. Gameplay-wise, it's absolutely phenomenal. Imagine if Gears of War was the video game shooter equivalent of NFL, or American football, Vanquish would be soccer. Gears of War is very much push on, grab cover, yardage. Vanquish is about constantly repositioning, getting the drop. And AI is very, very great in the sense that it's dumb. Like, they actually believably behave like dumb robots, which would have taken quite a bit of good programming. And your main character, Sam, he smokes a lot and he talks in a Solid Snake voice. And one of the best techniques you've got 1 pack of cigarettes per mission. So you've got like 10 cigarettes, I think. I don't know why you're smoking a 10 cigarette packet. Maybe in the future smoking's bad or something. But all the robots have heat vision. So if when you're behind cover, you can light a cigarette and throw it away, and they all aim at the cigarette as it flies away, and you can sneak out the other side and get some shots in. It's absolutely glorious, glorious, glorious game. And then backstabbing, conspiracies happen, and then Not Solid Snake beats Not Big Boss, who turns out to be a traitor or something, and then Not Hillary Clinton gets her comeuppance, and the Not Russians attack you. Yeah, it's just a love letter to Metal Gear Solid. So I can see why Platinum was invited or involved, or why this Rising thing ended up happening.
You had me at Space Hillary Clinton.
I could have stopped there.
Yeah, I will absolutely now buy that game. And I think they're pumping out the new Transformers game, aren't they?
Yes, they are. you guys just heard me just rant on for like however long that was. So all I'll say is I'm looking forward to the Platinum 80s cartoon Transformers game.
Me too. They've got the bunch of the original voice actors. They've got cell shading animation. The combat looks amazing. Before I dive off the cliff, I too am very much looking forward to it.
Yeah. So that's my background for Platinum, and so I think they understand what Metal Gear Solid is, but they also understand what direction they should take it in. I'm glad they didn't try to copy Kojima or copy what Metal Gear Solid was. They took its ideas and the basic Metal Gear Solidness of, taking a social issue and exaggerating it and using crazy sci-fi anime tropes to express it, and then they went in their own direction and used crazy Platinum, tropes and story beats and exaggeration and crazy characters and sword fights to explore these ideas. Yeah.
That was something I did really like about Rising, was that the whole time I was playing it, I did get the sense that they were fans of the game. I was like, all right, these are people that have played through the series.
Yeah, it feels like it, eh? I mean, I like they got Quentin Flynn back. They had some fantastic continuity. Like, it wouldn't be hard for them to go, oh, this is Raiden in the future and he has a different voice and everybody get over it. But hey, no, they went for it. That was certainly very cool. And there are a lot of great Metal Gear Solid moments. I like that so much of the detail was piled into the codecs.
Sure, and we got the cardboard box.
Yeah, you got the cardboard boxes. An average player could just blitz through it as an action game and then go back and master it. And Platinum games are about mastery, not about finishing the story. You haven't started playing the game until you finished it on hard. But there's still all that narrative and backstory and funny conversations going on in Rising. Phil Lamar was Kevin, wasn't he? And
he was.
He was Vamp, and then he came back as Kevin, as Raiden's buddy, so that's kind of neat.
Absolutely talented voice actor, too. His range is all over.
Yeah, he's very, very good. I loved Doctor. Whoever did that guy, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, got the sense of humour straight off the bat. Like, that slightly unaware genius Doctor thing. He's a different incarnation of Otacon, really. A different Otacon with a different joke behind him. As a butt of a different joke, I guess. And of course, we've got Armstrong, one of the greatest Metal Gear franchise characters ever created.
His voice acting was, especially in the last scene, was absolutely over the top, platinum, and like Metal Gear Solid hilarious. It was fantastic.
It would have been very easy to cock up, but hang on, I want to look up who that was just so I can name check him. Senator Armstrong, voice actor. Okay, first autocomplete. Senator Armstrong for president.
I'd vote for him.
Very, very, very easy to ruin and to over-cheese that character, but he ducks back and forward. Alistair Duncan.
Right on.
His name. Yeah.
I like how he used the fact that he played college ball as like a defense to Ryan. He's like, oh yeah, well I played college ball. Like, oh well, clearly I'm outmatched then.
Yeah, that's just little American piss takes going on there. Oh, you play football. This guy's a real deal. You can see that happening on his campaign ad back in America, right? Yeah,
I could see it, being one of those like cheesy ones where it like starts up and he's standing in the middle of a field and like a football comes from like out of frame and he catches it. Oh, hey, I'm Senator Armstrong. Let me talk to you about yada yada yada.
I played college ball. Yeah. There's a lot of, and especially at the end where they just pile on that American political commentary. There's a lot of truths in there that they nail really well that you kind of things you couldn't really say if you weren't so overtly taking the piss. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of cool stuff in there, and yeah, it's cheesy, and yeah, it's, I'm going to say, obvious, but at the same time, it's stuff that you kind of don't get to say out loud very often. And being a platinum game gives them a nice little cover there, and you can kind of really just dig in and go, you know what, fuck this shit. And you know what, fuck this shit is one thing I love about Raiden's characterization. It sounds like a real diversion, but in the previous games, Metal Gear Solid 2, Metal Gear Solid 4, they get very, very, very philosophical about what's right and what's wrong, and who's got a good case, or does the ends justify the means, blah, 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 blah. And Senator Armstrong, being a politician, makes quite a good case for what he's saying. He says, it's full of hypocrisy, and the ends justifies means, and might makes right, and he builds himself quite a big case. But
Raiden does something that no other Metal Gear Solid character has ever done, and Raiden recognizes that, yeah, this guy might have a case, but he's still dangerous. Like, he's still gonna hurt people, and he's not good for the world. And Raiden doesn't really make a philosophical argument against him. He just says, fuck you. Fuck your bullshit. He says, what does he say? I can't remember his exact line. He says, you're full of shit, or you're batshit insane. Raiden doesn't really stack much of an argument against him. He just cuts through. Hard, get it? He cuts through all that crap. Sorry, I couldn't help it.
We'll have to do a drum line for that.
Yeah, we have to get one in there. Wah, wah. And he says, you're batshit insane. Fuck you, I'm going to kill you. And that is I like that as a call to action, especially in an action game, where we know, Armstrong's bad, and we know he's trouble, we know he's bad for this fledgling world that exists post-Patriots, but who has time to sit around and prove the case and make the philosophical argument, blah, 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 because this guy has made his bread and butter on tricking people into thinking that he's logically okay. So I like that a lot in Raiden's response. He says, you know what? Arguing about the stuff is for politicians, and I know you're bad, and we know you're bad, and I'm not saying this is a way to run the world, but Raiden is a man of action in this sense, and he says, you know what, you are full of shit, and now I'm going to kill you. Which, yeah, is something very new and very interesting, because it's something Solid Snake doesn't really ever do.
Nah, he just kind of either follows his orders or does present some kind of an argument. But you're right, I absolutely love that moment in Rising where, like, Armstrong goes on, like, this big tirade, and then the camera pans to Raiden. You're almost expecting Raiden to be like, oh, no, it should be like this is how you should run the world everywhere, like, blah, 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 blah. And you're just like, well, I'm going to fucking kill you because you're a dick.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to defend philosophically, but that's the point. There's no time for that, because this guy's clearly dangerous, and there's only one person who can stop him. So no matter which way you want to cut it, Raiden is the only person who can make that decision, and he says, nah, this is wrong. This is just wrong, and I'm not going to sit here and make a nuanced legal case for it. And I like that, and that kind of activity happens in an action game, and it's a game about action. That's neat.
It was indeed. Well, I think we're running a little short on time here, going just over an hour. You want to go ahead and call it?
Yeah, let's go ahead and call it. That was a big, long, one-way rant on Rising.
I liked that. That was good.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for you for being an awesome co-host. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Next week, we'll have Perfect Stealth on to talk about a few things that he specializes in.
Yeah, we all know what that means. All right. Thanks, man.
You got it, man. Y'all have a good one. Thanks, Flash.